his phone, but I don't know whether it's
Yeah.
office phone or not.
Yeah. Well, Jordan, while I got you on, I wanted to. You had talked about Mike Stewart, and you talked about who's the other fellow that I roomed with that works at Portland,
Mike Johnson.
Mike Johnson. And you had mentioned those two names that you had run into and who they presented, but you talked to them personally, eh?
I didn't get the chance to chat with Mike Stewart,
Okay.
but I did talk with Mike Johnson.
Okay. Well, what I'm curious about, you talked a bit about Mike Johnson's presentation, and I'm curious about what it was that you would have taken away from something like that that you might apply moving forward. And I'm thinking you probably have done most of the stuff already, but going to a clinic like that, you might pick up something, a little tweak or whatever. And I wonder if you could share that.
Yeah, well, at the coach's site conference, Mike's presentation was on ice. So he was working with high school aged hockey players up through kids that were playing junior. So it was a mixed group on the ice. But what he was working on was the one thing that was a bit of a key takeaway for me was working on offensive zone options in today's game and working on getting pucks from below the goal line and off the wall to usable spaces for shots. And for him, it was about um, creating creativity, but there was a little bit of structure to it and that piece. And it was really interesting to see how the players um, were stuck in habits in which, were coming from previous teams and well, just their previous experiences. So he was having to correct some of those habits out of them and having them look for open players rather than uh, just simply throwing pucks on net and from bad areas or things like that. So it was an interesting one as there was a little bit of structure to it as they're moving pucks low to high and rolling and those sorts of pieces, looking for people backdoor options and some of those.
Yeah.
But it was totally free in that the players needed to read and react to one another. And that was the expectation that he had for one another. I did get the opportunity to talk with Mike and asked him when they would add pressure in that situation. And he said not till later in the season and probably only a little bit of coach pressure to take away one of the options and that sort of thing. So it was really good. The other piece was to hear some of the vocabulary that he was using. And as long as the vocabulary was consistent, I think that the players would then all be able to be successful with it.
George, what did you think of the thought? Like I'm hearing you say deliberate practice, no resistance until Christmas. What was your feeling on that? Is that
Well,
too long, or at that level, should they not grasp those things sooner?
Well, I think that obviously Mike has a lot of experience working with those athletes in the WHL, and so these are the highest end athletes that are basically one step below pro, and so he has a better feel on it than I did. I was a little surprised by his response,
Yeah.
but I did understand what he was getting at when he said uh, that he wanted them to be able to see the options and be able to figure out some of those pieces. So that was a little bit eye-opening for myself, and I was appreciative of that response and made me think about it of how many times do we put it's that whole balance of when to put pressure on so that they play faster and when not to so that they actually uh, find options rather than just throwing pucks here, there, and everywhere.
Jordan, what about your AAA girls at that level? What's the balance between deliberate, progressive practice, no resistance, and then finally getting into competitive decision making of the offensive concepts or defensive concepts you might be applying in a competitive situation?
Well, I think you find balance, Wally, in finding able ways to which to do both. So there has to be parts of your practice that are designed at compete, and those pieces that allow players just that opportunity to battle and compete. Like I saw a video on the coach's site from Barry Smith, of course, longtime NHL assistant coach and multi-Stanley Cup winner. And he was watching the game today and said that you have to be aware that every 4 to 6 seconds there's a race in the NHL, and at the end of every race is a battle. So you need to have the opportunity for players to learn how to win races, learn the race to space rather than the race to puck, learn the opportunity of how to battle and come out with pucks, and whether or not you are have numbers to battle. Like if you are outnumbering someone, then the battle changes. Then if you're down in numbers, so that piece, and then when you're talking about your offensive zone or defensive zone pieces with some structure, that's where it's more on rehearsal. And so that would probably be times where you're adding less pressure and giving them the opportunity to read things in that situation before adding that pressure so that you can get confidence and understanding that I have options A, B, and C before putting the pressure on. And then later on, like you said, just adding a little bit of coach pressure so that you're taking away option A, so then they have to scan for B and C. So that's kind of the way that I would look at it.
Peter, thanks for joining us. And Tom, I just wanted to delve on that a little bit. Jordan was talking about Mike Johnson, and he was doing some deliberate progressive drills related to, I believe, low zone offense, Jordan. And he said he wouldn't get into progressing to advanced competitive kind of things until about Christmas. That seemed like a long time to me. So I'm curious, Peter, when you're working with the Puerto Rican women, is most of everything you do deliberate practice and then just trust them in the game to figure it out?
Well, uh, like I said, Wally, there's a minimum amount of practices with this team right now, so things kind of have to be deliberate. We deal more with the theory and kind of what it potentially should look like is over Zoom, where we talk about body positioning. On the forecheck, it used to be in the 70s and 80s. Two men players went as hard as they could, tried to destroy the other guys. And then at some point, they looked around for a puck that maybe was around there somewhere. Whereas now, it's really that first person goes hard to force the puck carrier into a position, and the second player is much more soft to the pile, kind of reading, almost being on an arc, but with your stick in a position where you can reach in and you can play a puck or move if they get beat away from the first forechecker, or you can become that forechecker. So more deliberate when we are together, and when we're not together, it's a lot about theory and what would we do in what situation and how would we attack, and what if A, then what do you do with B when B happens, and then when C happens, what do you do? So more in terms of that type of teaching right now.
Yeah.
And it's more, I would say, Wally, that the word deliberate, I think, is a little bit of a misnomer in this sense. This isn't systems work, it's structure work. So it wasn't It wasn't you are have to stand here and it's the X's and O's and drawing it on the board that way. It's more of the flow of the game and experiencing where you can move within the offensive zone to provide better options. So if the puck moves to this area, where do we need support and that sort of piece, rather than uh, that you have to be here and the puck has to move here and because we all know that as soon as that pressure is applied, or the old adage that the best battle plans are only so good until they face the enemy. So it's the same thing with this, that you've got to make sure that you're providing opportunity for thinking as well. And I think that that's more of what Mike was trying to stress there. I won't put words into his mouth, but I do think that it was more looking at structure rather than systems. So it's supporting players and supporting them and knowing where pucks can move and how to support it.
Well, Jordan, I think back to Tom and U13 when watched him work with the U13s. And I recall Tom working on deliberate offense with a pass behind the goal line, forward to forward, and F3, the third forward, being open in the slot. And he did that deliberately. And there was a payoff to it. And that's what I find at the U13 level is F3 just stands in the crease, doesn't make themselves available in a slot, and he did the deliberate drill, but then it occurred in the game after he did the deliberate drill. So, Tom, I'm just curious about your philosophy in terms of at that level and U15. How do when and how and would you progress to all the decision making and game like things after you've taught them, and what's your formula? One third,
Well,
two third, or
Wally, that drill you're talking about,
yeah,
I went to one of the Wranglers practices, and the forwards went and they did that on their own, and they all took turns being F3.
yeah,
So they lined up about, just below above the hash marks,
yeah,
and they did that on their own with no coaches around. And I thought, geez, that's a good idea. But I coached with Mike Johnson when I was coaching the St. Man. He was coaching Augustana. So I coached against him 4 years, and then I ended up at University of Calgary because I wasn't coaching. I was talking to him, and he said, "Well, you should be coaching." And he asked Willie to add me to the staff. So I saw him run a lot of stuff, and he really does a lot of deliberate practice in small groups and that sort of thing. And and I've also heard him speak at a few places like Vienna and all this. But there's a different philosophy, and this is what I picked up from Johanny and the Europeans and all that, is first of all, you put them in the situation with maybe just a little bit of talking about, this is what I want, and they play. And then after they've experienced, so that is to create a need to know. Now you start working on, okay, they were having trouble on the breakout, or they're having trouble on something or other. They've experienced it. Now there's a need to know. And then you have the deliberate practice. And Horst Wine writes about this all the time. He was a big field hockey coach, and then he took over the Barcelona football team, like the whole philosophy there, and they became the best team in the world, basically. So you play games with rules that make them do things, and they have problems and they have trouble doing it, or whatever, or maybe they're really good at it. But then you teach them, you know, you kind of give them the solutions or lead them to the solutions, and you create a need to know, and then they're there and they're saying, okay, I'm doing this because of this. So they're just not doing a coach drill. They don't even know why they're doing it. So that's a big difference is create a need to know at the start and make that your philosophy. And it's you know, that's what that's what I try to do when I'm coaching.
Jordan, can you comment on that?
Well, I think that that's one thing that I've learned from Tom over the years is the constraints-based small area games and some of those things that I think that really do support learning with players, and especially in the female game where you give them the why and they start to figure it out relatively quickly in some ways. And then it's the whole piece of making sure that you've built a culture in which the kids feel like they have the opportunity to fail, because growth comes through failure in practice. And I was talking with a person last night that was had coached on the male side for a lot of years and now has transitioned over to coaching on the female side. And he said that uh, the one thing that he's found that's the same for both, he said that the kids love to practice the things that they're good at and don't like to practice the things that they might have trouble with. And it was I was reminded of a story that I'd heard, and I can't recall who it was, but it was a rookie that had was playing with Pittsburgh. They'd come into Pittsburgh, and he was talking about the first time he was on the ice with Sidney Crosby, and said that he was all nervous and he knew that he was going to have to pass a puck to Crosby, and he made a perfect tape to tape pass to Crosby. So he felt relief going back to the end of the line. And he said Crosby came up to him and gave him shit. He said, I don't need the puck on my stick. I need it anywhere but on my stick. He said, I know I can receive a puck on my stick. He said, this is practice. He said, I've got to get better at handling anything that comes my way. And
Well,
so
Tom
that's,
Rennie told the same story about Pavel Datsuk when Rennie was assistant coach with Detroit. And
yeah.
Datsuk wanted to pass for a bunch of one-timers, and he was doing that. And after about three of them, Datsuk just threw his hands in the air and says, why are you doing that? I said, I I never get a perfect pass in a game. So you know, for exactly the same thought that you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, I'm throwing this out to all of you. Great stuff. Uh, Tom, basically, what I'm hear you say is whole part whole teaching. Sort of whole is do the whole thing, play the game, and then break down into parts to teach, and then return to the game. And back in our day, it was teaching of a skill. We'd have them try to do it. Then we have to break it down. And is that sort of what we're saying here? A whole part method of coaching?
No, I didn't. I thought Hockey Alberta got it wrong as far as what whole part whole was. It's got to be a game situation. They're playing a game, trying to score against each other. That's the whole. It's not teach a whole drill and then take the little wee parts and go back and teach another drill.
Yeah.
You know. So the whole part, the game is the whole thing. Then the part is, the drill stuff, and then back to the game.
Jordan, I'm getting back to Mike Johnson here, and I'm thinking boys, young men, how have they been coached growing up? Um, I'm assuming, and I may be wrong, that they've sort of been told what to do and are so used to deliberate practice and fitting into a mold, they haven't been given the freedom of developing from thinking the game. And I don't know, but is there a difference in coaching today or females and males, and the fact females might be more receptive to wide open random kind of practice or and less to deliberate practice?
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one, Wally, other than the fact that obviously in the education profession that I'm a part of, that there has been quite a bit of research and time spent on the difference in way in which males learn versus females learn. And of course, classrooms are well, other than uh, some schools, most classrooms are co-eds, so it's a little bit of a blend. I think that the biggest thing that I'm discovering from coaching previously to now is that the players themselves have more individual skill now than the game has ever seen before. That these kids can all do things with the puck that even the top players back when I was a player could do. Like, well, we never thought to pick a puck up off the ice with your blade of your stick or things like that. But I mean, things that aren't really transferable too much to the game. But all the dangling stuff and things that they do, um, they all can do it. And but the thing that I'm finding is that they don't necessarily understand the the nuance of the game and how the game needs to be played. Um, and so that's where the focus has to change now, or the focus is changing in my realm of coaching, is to helping them understand the game itself a little better and the strategy of the game, the entire game, that you're one part of five people on the ice that were against another five, or well, I guess 6 and 6. But it's one of those pieces that the more that they can understand that piece, the better. And I don't know that there's necessarily too many players that are students of the game the way that there may have been previously, and trying to understand, yeah, what my role is versus what your role is versus what someone else's role is, if this happens or that happens. And I think that that's where the big part of teaching in the game needs to go now. They can all dangle around plastic, but now let's figure out how that dangling around plastic applies to a game situation.
Jordan, I'm thinking of Mike's presentation. Oh, what was it? Was there a title to it? Was it low zone offense, or did he have a
No,
theme?
yeah, he had a theme. I'll have to look it up here. Um, I don't know. I'd have to go back onto their site and actually get the title of it. Uh, and But it was around offensive zone options, and um, was one of the big things. And um, but I don't know. I'd have to go back on the site to see what the title of it is.
Yeah.
All of these presentations will become public, I think, this fall on their site, so others can see it too.
Well, George, last week, George said all his travels that he thought the Czechs did the best teaching, and I've been posting stuff lately, and there's quite a bit of stuff the Czechs were here and the Russians at the same time. And their drills, they enter the zone and then they'll do some cycle into the point and shot passes and all this kind of stuff. Much different than, like, it's a regular thing with them that all these they don't just go in a straight line. They do all kinds of stuff in their drills that I think is I know I want to incorporate a lot more this year of this kind of stuff. And so, after listening to George last week and then putting this check stuff up, I really, really know what he means.
Tom, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Um, can you try to explain that again? That the checks, it's not just north-south drill, shot, get to line. They provide more specific performance things within the drill, or
Well, an example would be maybe they do a 3-on-0. So they do the 3-on-0, and then there's pucks in the corner. And one of the forwards gets a puck, skates up the boards, reverses to the other forward who passes to the point, Meanwhile, the first forward's on the top of the circle towards the net, and the point might go D to D, and the second forward is now at the top of the circle heading to the net, and there's a shot pass. And then they do the same thing from the other corner. They may do things from, plays behind the net. So they incorporate all of these offensive options into the instead of just a 3-on-0,
Yeah.
there's these kind of things that, and they do that. Like every team does a little bit of it. Like the Flames will do just that, but they won't have the attack first.
Yeah.
And I just think that they incorporate a lot more options into their regular drills than I see other teams do.
Well, Jordan, Peter, and Hell, that really helped me because I think most of the drills I see, uh, it's one and done. It's either direct attack shot and you're done, or whatever. You're working on direct attack, okay, big, and you can do what you want in the direct attack or the attack triangle, but there's no sustained possession, sustained attack, and becoming aware of the options that occur after the first attempt. And I think that's a good point. Is I mean, all the drills I watch are excellent. They're well executed. They're teaching attack triangles and middle drives and trailers and starting to do 2-on-1s with their heads up. But it's after the direct attack. There's sustained possession. There's whether it's cycling, whether it's moving the puck from behind the net, corner to corner, or low to high. I think they're ready to do that at what age? Like, Tom, you had success at U13 after watching and copycatting the Wranglers, an American League team. You saw it pay off pretty quick, and so did I in those games.
Yeah, because often kids just go stand in front of the net and right beside the defenseman. They're not really even an option, right?
Yeah.
And they instead of being F3 that they're there to do other things if you lose the puck, and that was just and I found it really interesting. The players just went and did it on their own.
Yeah.
The forwards, and they would, and
And
they
that
took
was
turns being the
U13.
F3.
What about U15? Are they still prone to doing that?
Well, I think some of their dads tell them go stand in front of the net so you score some goals, and they're not doing the way we play.
Yeah.
You always have that. You always have that. What are they being told? And that's why I made a point this year of meeting with the parents, showing them exactly the way I wanted them to play, and so that they're not telling them those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I learned this year that was really important to do. And live and learn.
So you feel the addition of continuing your attack and possession and using a variety of different things, that's something that you teach to parents because they're the ones that are coaching from the stands, and they might be doing like what Jordan said, just get the puck on the net and go and crash and bang. I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't teach the parents the particular drill or whatever, but
Yeah.
just the big concept of how we want to enter the zone and do things from there. And then I send out a practice plan all the time. You've seen them, and there's diagrams and there's video demos.
Yeah.
That so that they can see what we're trying to do.
Well, Tom, what you're talking about is fits into a couple of other things that speakers had said down there, and these speakers weren't necessarily, well, they weren't hockey people, but of course, for me in a leadership role in my work life, I was looking for some of those pieces as well, and The one was talking about the damage that can be caused with stealth expectations. And it's us holding expectations of someone and not communicating them to them, and then not understanding why they can't achieve them, or vice versa, where parents have expectations that they haven't communicated with us as coaches, and when their player doesn't achieve them, they're frustrated by it. So that piece of understanding the I'd never heard it referred to before as stealth expectations, but it's really was one of those interesting things. The other one was a lady that Catherine Hickman, that's an assistant general manager of the Cleveland Browns. Her talk was really good. And she's a French Canadian woman that is a lawyer that had worked with the CFL, and now she's down in the NFL as an assistant GM, and some are saying that apparently she might be the first female general manager of an NFL team. But one of the things that she had talked about, that saying that culture isn't chemistry, it's clarity. And it's about making sure that everybody knows what we stand for. And she'd also talked about the difference between standards versus rules. And that these are the standards that we believe in our organization or our team or whatever, not relying on rules. Because she said if you have a whole bunch of rules, then you have to turn into the police officer and enforcing the rules exactly the way they are. But if you have the standards, everybody has to reach the standards. And so some of those are interesting philosophical pieces that I think are great reminders too, that go beyond the X's and O's of what was happening on the ice, and talking about how culture isn't what we preach, it's what we permit.
Yeah. And I think also, like in hockey, because there's so much work on individual offensive skill, that a lot of parents, that's what their focus is. Like we have one girl leaving that from to go to one of these super duper leagues or something. And I know her parents, their only focus is what she does when the puck is on her stick. You know that, and she didn't do so well because she was the first year this year, where she was a really big girl, and in the Pee Wee the year before, she was dominating because she was already, as probably fully grown, and all those other parts of the game, she needs a lot of work on them. But the parents, they, they just want that individual offensive skill all the time, and if their expectation is not the same as the goal of the team, and that's something I think we're dealing with all the time with this emphasis on individual offensive skills. Like
Good.
in Stockholm this year when I went to that conference, they were talking about the difficulty of getting kids to get their heads up because they're practicing going around pylons all the time and under things and all this. And then, like you said, they can do anything with a puck, but when you get that puck, your head's got to be up because there's a play there right away. And you have to be able to recognize whether, you should be carrying it or moving it or et cetera, et cetera. So that's a battle we're fighting against all the skills coaches out there.
Jordan, your point on the lady that may be an NFL manager and leadership, standards versus rules, was that what she talked about? And rather than have a sort of a legal policing approach, you establish an expectation of standards of behavior, sort of like who we are. Can you elaborate on that a little more? Because I know we're educating coaches to do uh, create an understanding with their group, their parents and their players, of how they're going to do things. And the idea of having standards to me is better than having rules to make them achieve those standards.
Yeah, well, what she had said, she had 3 points to defining your standards, and she said number one was what does it look like when we are at our best? So defining what it would look like for our organization or team or whatever when we're at our best. And then their number two was what do we need to see every day? So what are the daily things that we need? And then the third one was what are we no longer willing to tolerate? So it's taking out the pieces and actually looking critically at the culture of your organization and what are the things that aren't working and getting them out of there. And her idea with it was standards over rules because rules are reactive. And she felt that standards fostered power and ownership. That that your standards you got to live in them, and they're not just words. And then when a standard is modeled, it becomes self-sustaining. She is the way she explained it.
Jordan, I, I think I could put you on the spot on that one. Thinking of those three concepts, can you be more specific in thinking of how you would apply that with your own AAA team?
Well, it is evolutionary, and I think that um, it's something that as a coaching staff, you have to talk amongst yourselves to have because there's certain standards that you have, but I think that the more powerful is to create them as a group, and I think that it um, maybe goes back to your mission statement exercise as well, Wally, that having shared vision of what you want but the standards are more along your daily standards. So you're looking at, and it can be almost anything. I know that going back to the covenant that Rick Puttock had created several years ago, and I borrowed it as well. And those are things that are generated both with the coaching staff and the players. And I think that that's where it has to come from to really be valuable or for something that people will live in.
Now, what was the second point? You had standards first, and the second point?
Well, it's just that standards over rules, that rules are reactive, and that standards are things you can live in every day, and that when a standard is modeled, and that's for all, then it becomes self-sustaining.
Yeah. I just wanted to make reference to Morris Lukovich and his similar conversation related to this. Um, and it's who we are, it's the identity created by the standards you set. And, it's as opposed to specifically pointing out or sitting a player, uh, holding them accountable for that behavior. Uh, just a general comment on reminding us of our standards and who we are, what we want to be, might help solve the problem more than dealing with it reactively. It makes absolute sense, Jordan. It's just teaching self-awareness and personal control.
Yeah, and that was another thing that a guy by the name of Ryan Blank was sharing in his that he he said that people who want you to hold them accountable need a babysitter. They don't need a coach. And so he's talking about the power of personal responsibility and placing that back on the individuals. So you have the standard, you have clarity in your standards, and then put it back on the individuals themselves. And he also had said people will succeed to the level that they believe that they will be successful. So you have to give them the belief that they can succeed beyond the level that they're at right now, and then work with them to get there.
I love that. It sort of blends in with my concept of transmitting belief in terms of believing in them and having expectations because authentically, deep down, you really do believe they're capable of that. And that's it's heavy stuff, but it's really good stuff. I really appreciate it. Now, the I I think it's appropriate. Now, I had this talk, coffee with George Kingston and Tim Bothwell yesterday, and we were talking about the accountability piece. And oh, we got into addressing unacceptable behaviors on the ice, like not passing the puck, being a puck hog, uh, and how do you address that in a way that fits the model that you're talking about? And I think it means you need to talk about that before it happens, and you react to it. And that's what you're saying. So the specificity of those issues that I've identified over a lifetime are quite simple. Um, I think shift length is something that determines has a great deal to do with your culture and your standard, the expectation of the level of play and the pace of play. And so we say holding people accountable to that. And I remember you making them aware of that. Just having your flip charts on that they had to come to the bench, flip the volleyball score sheet on the defensive door and the offensive door as they changed. They were being conscious of a standard of behavior and a way of playing. That's connecting to the culture and expectations and who you want to be. So, how do you feel you progressed in that trait over your period of coaching? Have you got a better handle on that now, and or is it still something that you continually have to deal with?
Well, I think that the what you're talking about with the with the volleyball scoreboard on the bench, it was an idea. I don't know why it came to my mind, but it did. In that a visual reminder of what an appropriate shift length should look like, because there were just so many kids that came with poor changing habits and shift lengths that a minute and a half was common for a player coming out of U15 AA. And so the way it works is sit down with the team and we do the simple math that if we have 40-second shift lengths, there should be approximately 30 shifts in a period. And so we put the flip chart in the middle of the bench. And as you said, when a line changes or a D pairing changes, it's their responsibility, one of the ones coming off the ice, to flip it once. So trying to get to 30 or more in a period. And it's a visual reminder to the kids, but it also helps to train them to understand what 40 seconds feels like. And so I use it usually at the start of a season and if we get into a little bit of a lull, because it actually is really interesting to see the kids pick up on it themselves. If we've had a period where another team has kind of had the momentum, lots of times our shift lengths are too long, and that number is low, and so they figure it out, and that piece. But uh, where I see things is that at the start of every season, you kind of have to go and train them again, because you have new players joining your club, from different situations and that. So we'll be using it likely at the start here again. Um, and the other piece with it is it's not just the length of shifts, it's when to change and pieces like that working with them, because it it can be a numerical advantage and can be a numerical disadvantage if you change it at appropriate times, or inappropriate times. So it's one of those pieces. It's a micro part of the game that they need to be aware of. So we'll continue to work with that, and that is a standard. They do know that. I was chatting with a coach the other day that he lets the players and parents know that if you take an extra long shift, when I sit you down for that, it isn't a punishment. He said, what all I express is that you've already taken that ice. You've taken your ice for that part of the period. If you were out there for a 2 minute shift, well, that's twice the amount of a regular shift. So I guess you need to sit for one shift and to balance it out. And so that sort of philosophy too. But it comes back to the standards, and it was General Morrison that said the standard at which we walk the past or the standard that we accept. So anything that we allow is what we accept. So we have to make sure that are we accepting of it, or is this truly what we believe in?
Jordan, back in the day when you coached in outside of Calgary, I believe it was U15. Uh, were you playing with three lines or four lines?
At that time, that U15 league was only three lines,
Yeah.
uh, nine forwards and 6 deep.
And this is something that I wanted to bring up because uh, Hal, you're coaching a high school team, I believe, which is you have three lines. Most people play two when they have three. Some overplay one when they have three. And I don't think they're paying attention to 40-second shifts. They're just trying to get their best players out there. But the dilemma of growing up with three lines and suddenly going to four, I mean, we're losing kids to Super Leagues because they have three lines and they get more ice time. Now, whether they're playing longer shifts, changing poorly, getting better, um, I think that's something we have to deal with is they want to get on the ice and they get on the ice more often with three lines. So that's sort of a bit of a dilemma in terms of keeping kids in the program because they really don't understand the importance of four lines. And what use are four lines if people don't use them? So I wonder, Hal, are you on right now or?
Yeah, I've been listening. I've been driving and listening. I'm not driving right now, but this is fascinating. I love this. Um, uh, I think on one of those videos I put on the coach's site in the last couple of weeks, talks about some of these things. And so, um, yeah, this is evolutionary because it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to do this stuff. And most coaches aren't going to spend the time or energy um, to do it, in my opinion. So,
Peter, I don't know how long it's been since you've been a head coach of a team and this was your responsibility, but can you speak to this idea?
Yeah, again, like I'm being on board with Hal and the rest of you. You're essentially this was my philosophy. I mean, for me, it started with everything we did on campus, as far as how we greeted other students, how we greeted professors, the community service we did. I spent easily as much time helping try to create culture and guide as I did with the X's and O's. And I firmly believe the success we had was equally as important with the fact that our culture was such that it was. We had a wonderful culture. We led the university out of the 20 plus sports teams. Almost annually, we led in community service hours. There was also a point where I think we were second in the nation. They keep track, Division One, Division Two, Division Three. Actually, there's this group that keeps track of the community service hours that teams do, and I think we came in second in the nation in that. Um, that to me, that's the difference maker, right? At the end of the day, if I know that I can count on Wally and Wally knows that he can count on me, we'll do whatever we need to do to support each other. That's off the ice and that spills on to on the ice. And that's really one of my frustrations with coaches. Some of the coaches today, not all of them, but some of the coaches today, like Hal was just saying, that's really hard. And it's not necessarily fun. If a coach wrote down what their responsibilities and jobs were, they felt as a head coach before they were a head coach. I don't know how much emphasis would actually be on this, but I mean, I've heard things like, we're not going to do community service with that group because they don't really support us. They don't do much for us. Well, it's not why you do community service. You don't do it to get something back from those individuals. You get it to contribute. And what you get back is the fact that you're learning as a group that's important to contribute. And once you can teach that kind of culture, then you will be amazed at the dividends it will pay in your room and in close games. And so, yeah, I mean, that is, again, I've always worked on that. That's always been a huge part of who I was as a coach. And I don't know if there's less of it because there's self-imposed pressure on some coaches to win. I mean, at the youth level, there's so little of that goes on. It's disappointing, which does also make it a little bit difficult, I think, to teach at the higher levels when you weren't taught that. So that's kind of my take on it. But yeah, I mean, I've been doing that honestly, Wally, forever. That's been one of my mantras: is leave everything better than the way you found it.
You formally did it at a university level with university athletes. Um, I don't know that any of our teams do that, uh, Tom, uh, Jordan, because we have two practices a week. We're focusing on getting ready to play games to be successful. And uh, the leadership component, I have to admit, my granddaughter played soccer, and that when she was 14 and 15, every week they spent days at an old folks home with seniors. And I just sort of brushed it off. It was very nice of them to do, but I think we can't underestimate the value of recognizing that they can do some things to help other people. And it makes you a better teammate. And there's no doubt about that. I'm glad you brought that up, Peter.
Well, Wally, our team last year, I know we went and did food hampers, and there was some other thing, and then we had a little, young team that was our they they came to some of our games, and the girls went on the ice and helped them and all that. So at at this level, I think it's really important that your managers are really good
Yeah.
and able to get, you know, be aware where they can help and do this kind of stuff. Because they're girls are pretty busy. Like our team, I think we did shooting on Monday, practice Tuesday, dryland on Wednesday, practice Thursday, and then 2 games on the weekend. So it's a pretty full schedule.
Well, Jordan, the coach's site, it was a week-long conference,
No, it's 3 days.
3 days.
Yeah.
Now, the one other gentleman you mentioned, and Mike Stewart, a local boy in rural, outside of Calgary that I know well. Um, you mentioned his presentation. Can you speak a bit on that one about what it was about?
Yeah, Mike is coaching over in Germany, and his was really interesting in that he had said that his team had done well, but they hadn't done very well against fellow Canadian coach over there, Rob Dahm. So he said he was asking Rob what the difference was, and Rob had shared, well, he said, my team is better at two-on-ones than yours. And so they went into a discussion on that. And so it led to this presentation in that they got much better at two-on-ones this past season. And everybody all thinks about two-on-ones offensively, but he was talking about the importance of two-on-ones or numeric advantage defensively and recognizing on defense when you have numbers and what you can do to get the puck back, isolating people and those sorts of things. So it was really interesting. He showed lots of video with it as well, but it was one of those pieces that it just helped to share the importance of awareness of things and taking advantage of what he called micro advantages and the little numeric advantage and so creating those opportunities offensively and well, it's one thing that we see a lot in at the youth level that players won't keep a numeric advantage because it basically a one or a two-on-one turns into a one-on-one when they just bury their head and shoot and don't ever move the puck to the other player. The other player is just a decoy, yet they haven't even looked at them. So it's those pieces and on the defensive side was the real interesting pieces of understanding what the trigger points were of when you have a numeric advantage, when can you go, when can you isolate, and those sorts of pieces. So it was all about creating transitions and turnovers and that on defense. And then on offense, it was just ensuring that you're keeping your numeric advantage and using it to your advantage. And so, yeah, Mike's session was really good, and it kind of coincided a bit with Laura Schuler's session as well. She talked about triangular offense and triangular situations on defense as well. So it's that whole piece of trying to isolate and outnumber.
I've never heard the term triangulation on defense. Can you elaborate on that, Jordan?
Well, I need to talk with Laura more on it. She did show video on it, um, and it's basically supporting the puck or the defender in a triangle formation. So you have support above, beside, and below, or that sort of thing is my take on it. And my take is a little rudimentary on it, but it was, yeah, we've all seen it in the offense, and I know that you've shared with me before about Wayne Fleming talking about supporting the puck in L's. Well, L's are just the L shape.
Yeah.
basically as a triangle. And but in the D zone, it was looking at making sure that you're supporting that or defending in a way of supporting it around or isolating and basically taking away the options
Yeah.
by having that shape.
Well, something I like to bring up is if you have three, you have a triangle,
Hmm.
and it's not an isosceles triangle or an equilateral triangle. It can have multitude of shapes depending on how they defend, and you want to offensively sort of create open spaces by locating better. I think that can be taught deliberately, but it has to do with coaches understanding the nuances of teaching how to play effective offensive, how to create offensive opportunities in a 2-on-1, or uh, how to attack with a triangle and benefit the most from it. And I think overall our direct attacks are uh, pretty good, but I think we still have got a long ways to go at our level relative to what I think they're capable of comprehending. Um, the attack with speed is really important. Keeping the head up is so important. And it's not the player with the puck so much as the player without it being available. And coaches can teach that. And the art of that is what it's all about, I guess. So, did Mike have any new ideas related to playing 2-on-1s as a defender?
It was situational, I think, in that knowing your reads and pieces of like that. But it was more, his presentation was more about looking for the micro advantage when you have two and they have one. And so, like, looking, and he was talking about um things like baubles and backs, so as trigger points. So if a player baubles a puck and there's two of you, immediately go. And or if their back is turned, then you can immediately go as two because you've isolated them. And so those sorts of things, and just little reminders that way of looking for any time that you have the advantage that you are being playing more aggressive rather than passive. And because there's lots of times where we're far too passive, and of course they're playing on bigger ice surface as well with it, and so it's looking to be a little more aggressive without the puck is what the read I took from it.
I
Tom,
just wanted to circle back a little bit about shift length and all this sort of thing,
okay,
because our I really like the way the Alberta League is run, that everybody makes the playoffs. So now it's not that important that you'll win a game on December 7th. Like it's important, but it's basically where you're seated, right? So that enables the coach right away, that enables the coach to play everybody. The other thing about, we play stop time 60-minute games, so you can have four lines. If I was like Peter and Hal and they're playing like 45-minute games and this kind of stuff, four lines is almost too much because they're not getting it on the ice very much. But what we did is everybody had 1 month they were on the power play, and at least 1 month they're on the penalty kill. And with 20 skaters, you got everybody on your team is going to be either in the power play or on the penalty kill. So everybody learns those situations. And when the end of the year came, we put the players that had done the best on the certain situations. So I guess I'm trying to say it really influences things if you have to make the playoffs, you know, so that demands and how long the games are, so So there's not a right or wrong answer about 3 lines, 4 lines. It's just, if you got really short games, 4 lines is an awful lot of lines. So I just want to throw that in there.
I've got there's an observation that I'm going to make watching Tom, you in particular, the past number of years. You've had players that surprised you. They were middle of the pack, but then they ended up the season being your most productive players in the playoffs. What would you attribute that to? Because I know so many people have picked players, they label them and they sort of limit them by how they utilize them. But when you have the developmental philosophy, they play all situations and they grow. And I know you had a couple of players that outplayed, outperformed the more talented players on your team. Can you talk about that?
Well, I think it's got a lot to do with growth and development because when you have that 2 years, so especially with this Bantam girls, U15 girls, a second year, a grade 9 girl, a 14-year-old girl is basically a young woman. All the body change, like grade 8, all those changes happen, right? By the time they get to ninth grade, they're young women, and most places are in high school. Then you got the girls that are just going into grade 8, they're still girls. And it's a huge growth development year. I know one girl grew 4 inches this year, and she was our best player in the provincials. And like that game we had in our hockey camp, she got 7 goals. And so I think that just the 2 year thing. And I remember playing in Bantam and Midget. My first year, I'd be, fourth, fifth in the team scoring. And the second year, I was leading the league in scoring. It's just a huge difference growing that 1 year of growth. So I think that's a thing. So they've been with you about 7 months now, and they've grown. And and I think some of them just pass other ones just because they probably were better in the first place, as far as just not big enough and strong enough.
Jordan, what about U18? Because their growth spurt is basically done. But in terms of development, is there, uh, have you observed different degrees of development where those people that were in the bottom third might have risen to the top third? Does that happen or not?
Oh yeah. Well, it's the tricky piece to me is that I believe players and all people need to develop in a place where it fits them and allows them to have their success. And so everybody's path is different. And so you look at it, and every player and every parent believes that their path is immediately from U15 AA to U18 AAA. And some even think that they should be accelerated and not play the second year of U15 AA as Tom's got one or two that I'm sure that parents that figure that piece or think that. But there's a lot of growth that can occur as long as they're growing in the right place. And it's kind of, if you look at it uh, with the plant behind you, Wally, it probably grows better in one area of your home than another area. But you wouldn't put it in the wrong place and expect it to grow the same in another place. So my long story longer on this is that I've had players that one player this past season that her first year of U18, she played at the community level or single A. In her second year, she played at the double A level. And then last year, she played at triple A. And this next year, she's going to be playing goal at Niagara University. And her path was different. we had another player this season that she did accelerate, that she played her second year of eligibility of U15 at the U18 AAA level and led the league in rookie goal scoring. But that's a different athlete. And so the growth that we see depends on the individual. And it's up to us to make sure that we're providing them the opportunities to grow in the right ways. The physical side of things that you see at the U18 level is that this is where they need to focus in on more of the weight training and those sorts of things and things that can make their body bigger and stronger. That's to get them ready for the next level. They have to be bigger and stronger physically. So that's where a lot of development has to occur. But yeah, the pathways of development are different for each individual, and we have to be aware of that. And so it's wanting to make sure that we again uh, don't have stealth expectations and make sure we communicate with parents and hopefully they communicate back. Um, I, I know that they all want their kid to have a Div 1 full ride scholarship, but that's not necessarily going to be the road for every single one of them.
One of the biggest, Wally and I, 10 years ago, we did this Bantam boys team. And this really little guy, he was like 5 feet, 90 pounds or something, a terrific skater. He made the team. I was in Stockholm at the World Championships mid-May. He was playing for Team Canada. And he didn't get drafted till the second year eligibility because he was still growing. He was playing in Regina. And then Seattle drafted him, started the second round. And, so I guess he's 23 now and he's 6 feet, 195 pounds. I looked him up in Hockey DB. So you never know at the start. And then my first year coaching AAA girls, long time ago, they let a girl play in grade 9. I think it was Shay Labby. She scored 32 goals as a grade 9. And also this goalie, Alicia Anderson, they let her play as well. She ended up playing for Lethbridge. She was the best goalie in the Western division there, university. So sometimes players are ready when they're in grade 9. Like that one girl you talked about. I haven't seen her play, but I heard she's really something. But,
Jordan, your first year of coaching AAA GHC recently, there was one player I remember you telling me um, how important it was that they train in the off season. And I remember you telling me this girl did train, and it affected her making the team and contributing to the team. So I'd just like to put a plug in for, when I don't care if you're the best player right now or the middle of the road player, not many of them train properly. They play a lot, but they don't understand the physiology of uh, all the aspects that go into fitness, aerobic, anaerobic, strength, flexibility, and actual mundane training, progressive training. Uh, they're not athletes, they're hockey players. So the training element, I know at the national level, if you didn't improve in your fitness testing scores, you likely did not get invited back to camps that you may have participated in a previous year. So really at the elite, and maybe it's the elite of elite, training is really critical. And I know more CIS teams are training in the off season than ever before. And more kids are beginning to catch on to that, doing the right things younger. So I wonder if you could speak to how important that is, Jordan, in your coaching and as you move into this season, how it might affect their growth and development and how you're going to coach them.
Yeah, no, well, The person you were talking about, Wally, is that obviously in our league, it's changed that we can have early commitments, basically commit our entire roster in the spring prior to the fall. And this one player, she was coming off an injury, and I didn't early commit her, but I shared with her if she put the work in over the summer that I could see her on the team. Well, she put the work in and more. That she came to camp and she was the player that was when we fitness tested was the strongest and had really good cardiovascular shape. Uh, and she just showed it on the ice as well and became a kid that was an automatic the first even after the first skate that we knew that we were going to be keeping her and she just led through the entire season as well that way and was absolutely terrific and we're I know that I can count on her doing that this summer as well. And again, back to the every player has a different path. Well, we have one player that we did commit this spring that she played 2 years of U18 AA before finally getting a year at U18 AAA this final season. And but she has just worked so hard on her game and seeing her this spring at different showcases that she looks like she um, has picked up her speed and is stronger, and she's actually been a fairly dominant player even amongst other kids that have played in our league the year previous. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she can do the year coming up. But this also goes back to you talked about university teams doing different things in training, and there was a speaker at the conference, Joel Becker, that was doing his master's in coaching at the University of Alberta, and he was a former hockey player, but then also a former national Canadian national long track speed skater, and he was talking about having a strong stride, strong hips, and biometrics. And he did some speed training was part of everything that he was doing, and it was basically putting the University of Alberta men's team hockey team through speed training every second week, and that it was similar stuff he'd said to what they would have done as long track speed skaters and he crunched the data and if the 10 weeks where they had done the speed training the team was a perfect 10 and 0 record or sorry 5 weeks that they'd done it they were 10 and 0 record or something that they didn't lose a game any week that they did that and the other weeks where they didn't do it they were 500 so it was really interesting talking about how off ice training was translating to what was happening on the ice. And so he's another person that I need to get more information from to see what what we can do to make it work for our kids.
That sounds like a magic bullet. Um, because in-season training is sort of like, you're a little worried you're gonna be fatigued, and it's not going to have a payoff. Uh, but it's interestingly enough, in training, the the threshold of 5 to 10 seconds is can be done in season, and the idea of overspeed and maximizing the muscle twitch and uh, pushing yourself to a faster pace than you've ever played in that short time period. Uh, it's something I think that we could do more of. Um, I know one thing, and this is a long time ago. Dave King, he used to do 2-on-2 small area games, and they had to be overspeed, and it was 15 seconds was the max. If your feet weren't moving, uh, it was going to be push-up time, and that was the only thing he did. He just did this bizarre high tempo keep away game where they had to keep their feet moving much quicker than they are accustomed to. So it sounds, I'm glad you got to hear somebody speak to that and promote it by way of a 10-0 record from that in season, because uh, something we can all consider in terms of fitting it in. Now, in year three, practice as a week, George, schedule, Jordan? That's,
Yeah, we're 3 days a week for practice and 2 days a week for off ice training.
yeah. So in Tom's 2 days of on ice, um, I think they're, adding a tempo factor, bit more of a deliberate uh, pace and setting a tempo at a higher pace is it's something worth experimenting with.
Yeah.
When one thing I would like to bring up, and I've found it really almost uncanny. Uh, when I coached and stayed with the player after practice and worked on a specific skill, I can remember Jen Botterill, and I just fed her pucks on the flank for one-timers. Didn't do any teaching, we just did it. And in the next game, she did it and she scored. And then recently, I'm looking at some video of a coach doing a similar thing with, I think it's one of the Hughes boys, where they deliberately practiced a flank pass, a fake shot, changing the shooting angle. And it showed video of him doing this isolated with the coach at practice. And then it showed video of the game the next day where he did it in a game. And that's one of the things that I think you can just sort of put in the back burner is if you got some free time and just work with the player on that. And I'm curious from an experimental point of view of people trying it. Now, I wonder if any of you have ever done that and seen a payoff. Peter, any ideas on that?
Yeah, I mean, I have, and really for me, really the only times that we really had much of an opportunity to do that were either at the prep school level, where we could get out onto the ice early, or in college. In youth hockey, it's impossible to do that because everything is so regimented and ice time is so uh, portioned out where your 50 minutes or your hour is over and then you're off immediately with your teams because you're splitting ice too in youth hockey here. For the most part, you've got half ice practices. So there's really not time to do much of that at the youth level, but at the college and prep school level, certainly. And yes, seeing benefits from that for sure.
Hal, what about you? Turn your speaker on, Hal. Hal, we need your speaker. Hal, have you got your speaker going or not? Nope. Well, guys, I
Yeah, there we
want
go.
to mention that uh, when I attended practices uh, at starting at 4:15 at this one arena in Calgary, and the players were there like at 3:30, dressed, and they could go on the ice. And some uh, some rink caretakers let them do that. Some don't. You don't go on until you're supposed to. But for whatever reason, this particular Zamboni driver they just went on the ice. They got out of school early, and that time that they spent having fun, loosey goosey was good, but that's probably one of the only times you can ever get out early to hone in on something like that with a few players. I know as a mentor, when I'm at the sidelines and kids are just stepping on the ice, boy, I'd love to just work with one or two of them about specific fundamental things because they get a chance to practice the details of that. And I think we just got to find ways to capitalize on that. Whether you create that time by just cutting practice short, keeping people out that want to stay out, or keeping some positional people at one end to work on those things, I don't know. But uh, I've just seen too many payoffs with specific tactical skill repetition. And it usually was at the end of a practice for players that could stay out at a high level, but I saw it happen in games. So,
If you go to pro practices or whatever, the players they work on one timers before or after practice when there's no structure to the practice.
yeah,
They're working on them all the time. And so if you've got a lot of ice time, you got time. We have a drill that we do with partner drill. I picked up from Sweden that where they take 4 shots. So you have the puck, I skate towards you, you pass to me, I touch it back, you pass, I one time it. Do that 4 times, and you take turns doing that just to, you know, learn how to do it. But it's absolutely critical to be able to one time the puck and that's you beat the goalie before they're ready.
and one-time shooting's happening much sooner when they're much younger than now than ever before. I'm not sure how you would rate it at your level, Jordan, in terms of their ability to one-time shoot, but there's
The
very
catch and
little.
release too on
Yeah,
the forehand.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a high level skill that they need to work on and that they do work on. Wally, that rink that you talk about, we used that for 2 years. And the players that would show up early and hop on the ice. And how we got on the ice early was a 40 pack of Timbits every so often to the rink workers was a good bribe. And because there was one guy that would leave the door up at the Zamboni entrance so that you couldn't go out there or would leave the lights off. And it's like nobody's using the ice and it's going to be flooded once after anyway, so it didn't matter. So smoothed it over with a 40 pack of Timbits the first time and yeah, it was good. There were kids that used that ice quite a bit and would come and jump on um, often. And then you'd have the odd kid that they would arrive at the rink at the same time as the others, and they stepped on right when the practice was going to start. And
yeah,
you knew which one was going to develop more than the others.
yeah. But, it's interesting. The idea of having a good relationship with the caretaker. Um, my brother, when he taught junior high school, he was really good at buying a bottle of whiskey at Christmas for the caretaker. And he spent a lot of time there. He'd bring him lunch sometimes. But the payoff of that doing that act, and it wasn't because he was trying to get more out of it. It was just the way he treated somebody who you need to respect. It gets back to that culture piece. You know,
Yep.
you treat the caretaker as well as you treat the principal. There's no difference. And I know that they just had a ceremony and a dedication ceremony as junior high school they didn't name the gym after him, but they put a plaque up on the gym wall, which he had a small sign in his office about how great the kids were at that school. So just junior high phys ed teacher who did it all coaching, coached his sons playing hockey growing up and ball and whatnot. But it's sort of like the authenticity of what you do and why you do it. That sort of goes into the culture. Jordan, it sounds like your trip and the number of speakers you were able to go to, you couldn't go to everybody, could you? Or was it possible?
They had workshops that you had to choose one of, but other than that, you could get to pretty much everything. So they had a mixture of on ice and off ice presentations, and yeah, it was a really great conference to go to. In that their key takeaways, as well as the other piece with it, was that there were 450 coaches there from all over the world. So you got to network with others as well. So it would be one that I would like to go back to at another time. And that the hard part for us, of course, is that it was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which meant that everything was 30% more expensive than at home.
It was a
Uh,
lot nicer when they had them in Vancouver.
yeah, so it's that
They're
was the
they're they're
hardest
going to
part.
be they're going to be here in September
Yeah,
in St. Paul.
yeah,
So
they're talking
um,
about that. So that'll be, but it's good anytime. And like I said, for me, it was applicable to my role as a school administrator as well. In that it was the leadership pieces were really key as well. So
I just wanted to make a comment to the power of a bottle of whiskey. That when we were in the provincials in Midget, we were traveling all over the province. We ended up in Coleman, and we were supposed to have a Friday night practice, but they didn't let us on the ice. So we snuck into the rink, and it was always windy there and a huge pile of coal dust then. And we snuck in the rink with us and ran around, played ball hockey in our shoes and that. But we didn't secure the door enough, and it opened up and got coal dust on the ice. And so they threw our coach in jail for not taking care of us. So we so we had this big, huge guy being a lineman in the CFL, and he was kind of parent coach or something, I guess. And he got a bottle of whiskey and went to the Mounties, give him a bottle of whiskey, and they let the coach out of jail.
that's definitely a different time than now. They threw away the key on you, but
And he was a real gregarious guy, so he could do that kind of stuff. Probably
all
had them all
right. Well,
laughing.
I've got to sneak out of here, Wally. I've got another place I've got to get to. I know that it's summer holidays, but I still have tasks I need to complete. So thanks for this, and we'll
thanks
see
for sharing.
you all.
Thanks, Jordan.
Seeing
Take
you,
care.
Jordan.
Yeah, see you guys.
Now, and Jordan, leaving, I sent a text out to all of you, and I don't know if you noticed, but Aaron Wilbur, he was on that text. And Aaron is sort of the founder of the coaches site. So I may get him to come on as a guest someday and talk about his site and what he's doing. But Aaron and I sat together watching the Midget Max tournament here in Calgary uh, for 2 days, and we didn't watch much hockey, but we talked a lot. And his experience with youth hockey and his own son is what inspired him to create this company. And right now, it's probably the most productive, informative, effective, and popular coach development site that exists. Now, you figured out how to add your stuff to it, eh? Hell?
Yeah, well, I got on with them. I don't know, maybe 2 years
You're fading
go.
on us.
And I was writing some articles um, off of my iPhone, and then I've now moving those onto YouTube and then loading them onto the coach's site. You know, they're not at the professional level that the coach's site is. I was thinking of taking some white hockey tape and putting it over the front of my hat and then write coach's site on it so I would have an official hat. But yeah, I mean, I look at some of the stuff and listening to what we're talking about here is all, culture, team culture, which is so important. And, but it's hard at the youth hockey level. It was a lot easier because I got pretty much a captive audience, and youth hockey. Of course, you're younger, and the parents are less. They don't quite get it. A lot of them, but I would attribute the fact that my teams always overachieved for the most part relative to their past performance before I started coaching them on how you treat the players and um, the things you need to focus on, which is different every year because you got a different set of kids, and you have to take whatever they come to the rink with and figure out, two or three things that will really make a difference with those kids. So, um, yeah. So now I'm getting recruited to maybe do our U15 team instead of the boys team, and I'm thinking about it.
The girls
uh,
team?
yeah, but I'm more interested in helping. Our girls team is a co-op the neighboring community, and they struggle getting coaches. I coached that team during the pandemic, and like 5 of those girls are going Division 1, and not because I coached them, because I only had those girls for 2 months, and then the high school coach grabbed them as 8th graders. But they're very talented kids, and this group at the high schools got 3 or 4 more girls that are getting calls pretty frequently from D1 schools. And this U15 team has apparently got some pretty skilled kids. Now they'll end up playing in different high schools, but um, they do want to learn. And the boys, they're wanting to learn. And I've got I'm gonna have 2 sets of twins on the boys. No, a set of brothers and 2 sets of twins. How about that? Um, which are also brothers. But we got some parent issues that I'm, it's hard work. And one of them is a former high school coach, and he coaches his kids pretty hard at home. And now he wants to coach this team, and it's like whatever. Um, but I actually enjoyed coaching the girls a lot because they want to learn and they get better. Um, there was something else I was gonna bring up for guys, but if I had my choice, it would be helping the girls organization not just coach one team, but how do they coach? How do they coach and develop and build a team culture at the 12 level also, U12. We have U12 and U15, which is, that's tough because you got a lot of years in there. And I'm going to try to get them to get whatever coaches they have down to the coaches site. Um, but it's a struggle. All this stuff is a struggle because, as you guys mentioned earlier, that you get parents that are only interested in their kid and don't understand the game well enough to understand what's in the best interest of their kid. But
Peter, in my role, 3 years ago, I mentored all the teams, and it was too much. And in the end, the parents were just not all the teams, but one of the teams in particular, two of them, uh, I spent 90% of my time with, and uh, I'm, I would have had a heart attack if I already hadn't had one. So they did hire a full-time DOP, uh, who is a good friend of mine, and I'm working now with that level, 11 and 12-year-olds.
oh
And
wow,
my focus with the whole all age levels is still the mission statement exercise and trying to create the culture. So I do that exercise early in the year with the parents. Well, first of all the coaches, and then the parents. And the coaches do a covenant with their teams, which is an extension of the mission statement exercise. And while I do hands-on work with coaches and what they're doing on the ice and watching their games and sharing observations, I get to know the parents because I sit in the stands uh, or up in the restaurant with a nice window talking about what they're doing and what we're
mm-hmm.
doing. And I mingle with the parents, and it's sort of like the caretaker thing. I just treat them like human beings, and they let their kids. I mean,
Yeah,
they care about their kids, and so do I. And the joy of what I'm doing is, okay, I may be more hands-on at U13, but when they go to Tom's team at U15, I get to see them grow up, and I follow their parents right up to U18.
oh
And it's not that I might see their kid play once every 2 weeks beyond U12, but I know in the spring hockey and in the Alberta zone hockey, now I'm running into parents who are attending U18 camps and U17 camps now with their daughters that I mentored when they were U13. So the relationship piece affecting the culture with parents, I think, is pretty significant. And it's a huge part. And one of the questions I wrote down, Tom, for all of you was you had mentioned you had three drills, hell, three things. And I don't know what your best specialty is or your favorite thing is. It doesn't matter what team you've got. I know they all have special needs, but my question was there something that you feel is most important to attend to and deal with that you would prioritize? And that's a question for all of you at the U15 level, U13 level. Tom?
Well, like I started going to Europe and paying attention to Europe because our practices were terrible here, I thought.
mm-hmm.
And so, anyways, going to all the people that George brought in, when I became friends with Johanny, he started bringing me there. And then, excuse me, I found out how Finland and Sweden organize everything. And they organize everything with, they say there's three situations. You're either on offense or defense or the puck is loose. And a certain percentage of every game is that. So you have to practice those situations. And then offense, you've got two roles, the player with the puck and the player supporting the puck. And on defense, two roles, player checking the puck carrier, the players covering away from the puck. And that's kind of the template for organizing everything during the season. You have to cover all of those things, So, you got offensive team play, defensive team play, individual offensive skills, individual defensive skills, and they have to be put in those situations of offense, defense, and loose puck, because about 30% of the game, the puck is loose. And you only get that by playing, you don't get that in drills because very much, right? Because drills, you either have the puck or you don't have the puck. So then you need to use games and transition games that have these situations occurring. So that's my philosophy of planning everything, and it's based on Finland and Sweden.
Hal, can you comment on that? As what you found?
Well, I also found myself in Europe traveling around at the IAHF conferences, which was where I met Tom originally. And of course, I also was friends with Herb Brooks, who, really, with the Russian influence on hockey. And so, I think Tom's 100% right in dealing with it at that level, with those priorities. And again, it's getting the kids to understand that if you don't have the puck, you need to be someplace, not just hanging around and waiting for it. And it's a that practice format that I run. I did that video on with is really designed for a lot of that, to influence game-like situations, and rather than X's and O's, you need to go here. It's like here's what it needs to look like. How can you get into that role? Wally, I wanted to ask you a question though. I did the mission statement last year with our parents, and I was surprised at sort of what their five main priorities were, but almost universally it was win more games. That was the priority. We want to win more games. And this is with a team of kids that hardly ever won games. In fact, we only won 16 games last year. And for the second year players, that was more games than they had won in the prior 5 years combined. So I guess we achieved the goal, but it was 16 out of 50. And they could have won two or three more, but those kids were happy. They
Yeah. See, the bottom line.
But I was a little disappointed.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
When you had them write five things they wanted to accomplish, did all of them write outcomes, results, winning, or a small percentage? Because the exercise, once they provide their list of what they want to get out of the year, what they want to accomplish, and you have to phrase that question so that it's open-ended. So some of them want their kids to have a positive experience. They understand, they want them to improve, to get better in skills, to develop hockey sense. So when you collate those in the two sides of outcomes and specific goals, that you think of how do you accomplish improvement? Well, it's through the hard work and effort, cooperation and teamwork. So the exercise is intended to just understand the years of process, and winning 16 games is a pretty major accomplishment. And you stuck to the process, and the kids were happy. And I think
Oh, the
that's,
kids were happy.
yeah. And I
Yeah,
think,
I just I think that a little different because I've done this in the and scholarship but then majority of the parents were much more aligned on getting better, having a great experience, teamwork, sportsmanship, and all that, and winning more games was not typically the the consensus number one. In this group it was. Now, we'll do it again this year, and I'll see because the team's going to be a little more skilled, and the kids will have tasted some success last year, either as peewees or with us as bantams. But I think this is a really valuable exercise to do to help parents understand, well, and the coaches to understand what the expectations are collectively,
yeah.
so you don't have problems during the season. So
Well, I think the big thing, the biggest challenge is the process, and how are you going to, what do you have to do to accomplish those outcomes?
right,
And that focus on the process and the work you need to do and the coaching that needs to be done and the parenting that needs to be done to
yeah,
create the culture to be the best you can be.
yep,
And don't upset the apple cart by letting the outcomes, wins and losses, dictate your emotions, your state of mind to provide a negative experience for everyone. So,
right.
Peter, I'm curious about you, and is there anything specific relative to your on ice activities that you feel are sort of go to things that you would want to do or expose your team to?
Yeah, for me, Wally, the priority has always been the defensive zone, and specifically recovery of that puck and getting out of our defensive zone as quickly as possible, because I think there's not as much time spent on that because everybody wants to score goals, and you go to a practice and you see 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, just practice over and over and over again, which obviously there's value to that. But kind of to your point earlier when we were talking, there's two pieces of that. One thing, you want to be able to create as many of those as possible, and that will likely come from your ability to be good in your defensive zone and recover pucks and be able to move them to potentially create those 3-on-2s, those 2-on-1s, whatever those scoring opportunities may be, scoring off the rush, as opposed to getting a puck, coming up, and then having just a whole bunch of players in front of you where you have no options other than to dump a puck and then try to grind that out. And I hate that. I hate the fact that I have a puck and then we get rid of it and then we want to go back and get it again. That's crazy to me. I think the game has changed so much. And then the other piece is, like you were talking earlier, and I think Jordan was talking about it, when you have those 2-on-1s, those 3-on-2s, and was Tom to make some specific points. What happens after that, right? Because I come in on a 3-on-2, I still have a man advantage at that point. I shoot and I don't score. How often do I recover that puck to create another offensive attack, since I already have a man advantage in there? I think working on that specifically is huge, because you're not going to score on every 2-on-1, or especially even on a 3-on-2. You're not going to score on every one. So after you do, can I recover that puck and be able to reattack? So I think those two skills for me are really, really important, because I think those are difference makers.
Peter,
I
I've
think
never,
what you just said there, Peter, is because I go and watch so many practices, and that's the last couple of years. That's happening in a lot of practices on a 3-on-2. They let them go after the puck and get it again for another chance, where before you just got out of the way because there's another 3-on-2 flying in behind you.
Yeah,
So
like why would makes perfect sense, Tom, right? Like why wouldn't you let that play out? Because in a game after that 3-on-2, you don't leave, right? You don't leave
exactly.
and you don't get guys coming to 3-on-2. Like the game is still being played. Let's play that out.
Well, what happens is you got to change from teaching drills to teaching hockey,
Yeah.
and sometimes people want that flow going boom, 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 but it doesn't really.
It makes your practice looks great. Like your practice looks awesome. It's flowing, people are moving, but what are you accomplishing? To your point, like what are you accomplishing? Because that's not really teaching hockey. And here anyway, I see that so much at the youth level. It seems like there's such an emphasis on getting the drill right instead of learning and learning hockey. Like you put that perfectly.
And a drill based practice, all the research done, and I've done it myself. Take a clock, stopwatch, watch one player. Drill based practice. One player will move between 8 and 11 minutes and stand there, you know, all the rest of the time, either listen to coach babble on or waiting in line or, all the different things. So it's not, there's a place for drills, but that can't be the only thing you do in practice.
No, and if you're
I,
creative too, right? You can start when you have the advantage, like at the college level, when you have the advantage of having, all the ice to work with, you can start a 3-on-2. As soon as that first wave passes the red line, you could jump out 2D, throw a puck, start it the other way. So I mean, you could get 10 people involved pretty quickly if you're creative with your drills.
yeah.
They
And
can
that,
finish it before it goes the other way for sure.
well, yeah,
And
I
I
mean,
see
it
that
plays.
more and more now in
Yeah,
practices.
and yeah, 100%.
I just want to mention you guys, uh, Hockey Alberta for the past 10 years addressed that with all their coaches. Uh, in any deliberate drill where you finish with a shot, you sustain, get a second puck, and have a second opportunity. And when Jordan began this talk, he talked about Mike Johnson presenting at the coaches' site on this concept of Xing, having your eyes up and executing more options after the first direct attack option that you deliberately practiced. So kudos, every drill ending with a shot should have a second shot based on some low zone offense opportunity with support. Now, Tom, I'm thinking back to your first year I worked with you at U13 and what the biggest payoff I've ever seen in my life with any team at any level, and that was pass completion. I mean, when a team can make 11 passes in a row in one shift at U13, their eyes are up, they're supporting the puck, they're going to execute sustained possession, and they did. And I think the statistic of that in a game adds value to the importance of possession and using each other and seeing the ice and supporting each other. So, Tom, the three aspects of the game that you talked about, you either have it, you don't, or you're fighting for it. And your idea here, when you have it, is doing something constructive with it, and not just finishing with a shot and giving up, but getting it back and continuing to attack. So If I was to add anything, it would be the consciousness of what you just said, Peter, and follow up every single shot drill with a second offensive opportunity with a purpose. And of course, you can play all kinds of small area games to add to that. But I think if people do deliberate drills, and they all do, just don't finish them with that direct attack, go to the second aspect. And when you translate it into games, the possession and passing stat, and Jordan added consecutive passes. In other words, if you did two in a row, instead of putting a slanted line for one, you would put the number 2 or 3 in a row, because if you can make 2 or 3 passes in a row, you're going to have a scoring chance. So I think all of this has really been good for coaches, but guys, we've been at it a long time, in our lifetime, and we're still trying to get it. And I think we have to appreciate coaches that are coming up the ladder that have coached only for 5 years or 7 years with their kids growing up. They're pretty darn good at doing the deliberate things, but the kind of details of building, sustaining possession, eyes up, puck control, battling and competing, they can all get better at. And hopefully some of this presentation will be food for thought for them. One thing I want to mention, and this is Hal, I've added drills to the coach's site. And the favorite thing I do here, I put my phone on a device, and I record using my phone a drill. I diagram a drill. When I edit this session, I might get 50 hits for the whole presentation and average 20 hits for the edited. But when I do a drill and post a drill, I get 75 hits.
Yeah, everybody loves drills.
They love drills.
I know.
And my drills are deliberate teaching drills. They're not thinking so much, but they're going to master the skill to execute one-on-one under pressure. So
I gotta show you something that happened this week that I've never seen before in my life. I saw just this chart. I don't know if you can see it. Saw this little shooting chart, reaction time, goalie, whatever, and it just caught fire. And the most I've ever had, like post reach, is like just over 100,000. With when I talked about Alan Andrews passing. This one here, I don't know if you can see the bottom, 624,000 post reach. And I have no idea why this thing was so popular, but I've never even been close to that before.
Tom, you don't have your computer on, do you?
Huh?
Do you have
What?
your computer on?
My computer off?
On.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
Okay, now listen. One of the things I wanted to do was for us to be able to share screen. Can you find that drill you got on your phone and try to share it on the screen?
Well, I posted it on my
I know you
my
did.
Facebook. I'll see if I got it on my phone. Wait.
Well,
Okay.
if you want to find it on Facebook,
I'll see if I've got it as a picture on my phone.
yeah, but we want to see it on the screen on our computers. And I want to record it as you show it. Because we've got this share screen that I'm paying big bucks for. So we can get all your expertises here.
See, I think what happened with this one, I just happened to see that. So I just did a copy the picture thing and I pasted it on my Ice Hockey Coaching Youth to Pro Facebook page.
Can you
And so
can you
it's
find
not
that
on my
page?
phone.
Because I got up early this morning trying to find that page because I've never heard of anybody getting that many hits.
No, I know. And like it's unbelievable. I thought it was unbelievable when it reached 150,000. Then it kept getting more and more. And I don't know what turns everybody's crank about it. I got it on right now, but I don't know how to share it with you. I have it on my.
Okay, well at the bottom, uh,
So I just have the
on,
Facebook thing on. Maybe I can
on the
take a
bottom of
picture
your,
of it. Okay, I can go copy image.
well, you should be able to share. You're on Zoom right now, correct?
No, well, the picture is on. It's on
You
my Facebook page.
At the bottom of Zoom, there's a share page, and then we go to your. From there, you can share your Facebook page.
Uh, now
So if you got the page
I
where
just
we're
went back
all
to
on,
Zoom and I just get this Zoom sign now. Darn
Okay,
it.
boys, gotta go. See you later.
okay.
Hey, see ya, Hal. I gotta
Yes.
go in a few minutes too. My dogs are chomping at the bit.
Yeah, good talk, fellas. Great to see you. Enjoy the day.
Okay, take care.
Hey, see ya, Peter. See ya, Hal.
Yep, bye-bye.
Tom, if you wouldn't mind, can you find the Zoom page and see if you can share
Well, I'm
your.
trying to do it again, Wally, because somehow I lost it and I don't know how I lost it. Oh, wait a sec. Here it goes again. I got it. Now I got it.
Okay, click on share
But yeah, okay.
and then go.
Send request. Sharing is not turned on. So I don't know how to turn it on. But I gotta get going here.
Okay, no problem. We'll figure it out another time.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, I've allowed
I
you to
don't know if I
share
can
now.
share one site to another site.
Yeah, but I think what we should do, you and me, is just play with this. I'll share with you something I got. You share with me something you've got,
Yeah,
and then we'll do it another time. Okay?
sure. Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, I gotta take my dogs and you take care, Wally. I'll